This is section 3, and the subject is the Son, as will be clear in this opening verse. The world has spoken, the Father has spoken, and now the Son speaks. I will declare the decree, he says. The Lord hath said unto me, Thou art my Son, this day have I begotten thee. You'll remember that the previous section, which ended in verse 6 here, concluded with the awesome silence that followed the Father's announcement, and now King Jesus stands up to break the awesome silence, and he says these majestic words. It's really high drama. Now the Hebrew word translated here, declare, it carries the idea of redeclaring or recounting something, and how profoundly true this is. The message, you see, is not new. In a nutshell, it's that the Messiah will be God himself, he shall inherit all the world, and he shall judge the nations. Now these facts were known way back in history, beginning with the simple statement in the garden in Genesis 3:15. And we know that the patriarchs were well aware of these truths. Jesus himself said that Abraham saw his day and rejoiced, John 8:56. And I'm also reminded of the little known fact that God wrote the gospel in the stars before he gave the written testimony. The heavens declare the glory of God, says Psalm 19 verse 1. And here Jesus is redeclaring that glory, the ancient story, the primeval promise of salvation through God's Son and his reign over all. What a scene this is. The drama of the ages, truly. Everything is mere commentary on this scene and the meaning embodied in it. It's the fulfillment of all history. Now he says here, I will declare the decree. Now that is an interesting Hebrew word right there. Decree. It was chosen by the Spirit, and it gives us sensitive insight into the redemptive work of the Messiah. The same word is used for the sacrifice of the red heifer in Numbers 19 as is used by the Spirit here. Cutting a long story short, the ashes of the sacrificed red heifer could perform a miracle of cleansing where necessary, but it rendered unclean those who administered it. This was a mystery, and it was a command by God, and yet nobody could ever understand how this was effective or why it was commanded by him. The whole thing was shrouded in mystery. It was said that even Solomon couldn't explain it. This mysterious offering and the process it involved is called by the same word used for decree in this verse that we're looking at, and the word is chok. Chok. And it means a command that must simply be accepted even though it's so profound that it's beyond human understanding. And the question is, what has this got to do with what King Messiah is declaring in this psalm? And the answer is, the decree or chok that he is recounting is the mysterious one that God himself will come to earth and he will do something so strange that it must just be accepted in faith. It will be beyond understanding, even that of Solomon. In the famous passage in Isaiah 53, which describes this strange work of God, the prophet cries out, who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? You see, he was acknowledging the strangeness, the mystery of his prophecy, that the King Messiah will be put to death and yet inherit the entire world through his sacrifice. No wonder then that here in our psalm, the Spirit describes the decree with the word chok, something that had to be done even though it surpassed understanding. God in his Son would die for the sins of the world and be raised from the dead. Who can possibly believe such a thing? It's a chok that must be received in faith. Every Christian then is a miracle of God's grace. Finally on this verse, the word for begotten, thou art my Son, this day have I begotten thee. This word means in the Hebrew, brought forth. And I like this because begotten can evoke ideas of a beginning. Everyone who is begotten has a beginning. And we know that the Messiah has no beginning nor end. He is eternal. So the phrase brought forth avoids this problem. The Messiah existed in eternity past, and was brought forth by God at just the right time in Earth's history. This is very close to the truth, or at least it's easier for us to understand, or for me to understand. Now the section goes on. The Son relates what else the Father said to him. And listen to these wonderful words. The Father said to the Son, and the Son's recounting this, "Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession." You see, because the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, Psalm 24 verse 1, God the Father can bequeath that to whomever he will, and he happens to have an only Son, so no prizes for guessing who will receive the earth and all its fullness. But the Son must ask for it, it says here. That's interesting. The Hebrew for ask contains the underlying meaning of desire, and I like this, because it's possible to politely ask for something, and there's very little yearning or desire behind the asking. We might say, "Pass the sugar, please," but there's no yearning there. But this dialogue between the Father and the Son exhibits what real asking is all about. Now, the request for the entire world is to be inspired, you see, by a burning and age-old desire in the Messiah. And who can withstand the desire of the Messiah? Jesus hinted at this in the Passion when he cried out, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I longed to gather you as a hen gathers her chicks." Luke chapter 13, verse 34, and a number of other passages. The love of Jesus is fierce. Many waters cannot quench it. In the words of Solomon, love is stronger than death. Song of Songs, chapter 8, verse 6. How wonderful for us to know that Jesus has a passionate desire for the world, for us, for all creation. And then, as the Father goes on to say, for the uttermost parts of the earth. That includes Antarctica, the distant Andes, even the deserts of the world. Jesus shall have them all. Who could stand against such longing? His love is stronger than death. The grave couldn't hold him, and that love binds us to him with hoops of steel. Now, regarding the word inheritance, which you see here, inheritance. Being as the entire creation belongs to God and the Son is the inheritor of all that is the Father's, the word inheritance can also be translated heirloom. Isn't that nice? All of creation is the heirloom of the Godhead, at present being contested by satanic forces and wicked men. As Christ's bride, the heirloom is also the church's. The earth is the family heirloom. And so we shouldn't be surprised if we also are the object of spiritual warfare. And now it's as though the Father gestures over to the rebellious kings and rulers of the first part of the psalm. And he tells the Son what is to be done to them as follows. And so he glances over, as it were, to the kings and rulers, and he says, "Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel." Now, if you've ever smashed a clay pot, you'll know how thorough it breaks. It shatters because it's made of baked earth and it's hollow. What a marvellously appropriate metaphor for the nations, the kings and rulers of today. They are, in the words of Paul, earthy, of the earth. And boy, are they hollow. An old saying they taught us at school, empty vessels make most noise. But not only are the self-exalted elitists of this age hollow vessels that make much noise, so is the society that they are hoping to produce. It's full of grand statements, proclaiming the wonderful cleverness and virtue that we possess compared with previous barbaric generations. They lived like pigs, unsanitary, profligate, religious and racial bigots. Narrow-minded they were, clinging to superstitions about God and heaven and hell. But we have ascended out of the mud of ignorance. We have broken the bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. Like hollow vessels they make much noise, and like clay vessels they shall be easily broken. The Father commissions the Son to do just that. Just make sure you're on the shelf with them. You're not on the shelf with them when his hand sweeps them away. Put your faith in Jesus, the King Messiah, and you shall be safe in him, and you, together with him, will inherit all the glories of this world. You see, these modern kings and rulers have no substance because they are humanists, meaning they have exalted mankind to the place of God. And a human separated from the true God is hollow. He has no substance. The word in the Bible is vanity. All is vanity, said King Solomon, wisest of men, Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 2. And at the end of his book, the book of Ecclesiastes, he gives the solution. He says, reconnect with God and you will no longer be empty. You find that in chapter 12, verse 13. You see, Ecclesiastes is a gospel message, often missed by people. And the final section of this psalm is a gospel message, as we shall find out next. Meanwhile, the question remains, which empty vessel will I vote for in the next election? I lift my eyes to the hills. From whence cometh my help? My help comes from the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. Psalm 121, verse 1.